George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. So glad you could be a part of our conversation today. And we've got two special guests in the building. Yeah, I stole that from DJ Envy. But here's what we got. We've got Dr. Emad Rahim and Marissa Saunders. They're both the co-chairs of the 2021 Vera House White Ribbon Campaign. And so what is the White Ribbon Campaign? Well, we'll tell you what that is. Why are they here? Because they are both here to share their stories of being survivors, both of domestic sexual violence and also of domestic violence and genocide. So that's a lot. That's a whole lot. But they are our 2021 co-chairs. And of course, Marissa Saunders, first woman ever, right? And so how did that happen? This is supposed to be men leading the role. And Marissa said, yo, I got a story to tell. I want to tell it. And so they also both participated in the Vera House 12 Men model. So who wants to tell us what the White Ribbon Campaign is all about, since y'all are honorary co-chairs? Then we'll get to your stories and then what you want the community to do. So who wants to take that on? Or should I just say, Marissa, what's the White Ribbon Campaign?
Well, I was actually going to say, I think it's appropriate for Dr. Emad to do it as the man,
yes,
because we know what the White Ribbon Campaign is what it stands for and who is doing it.
Yeah, and I should say I also work with Vera House and I work with these folks as well. So just so we can have that on the table too. Okay.
The White Ribbon Campaign is a male-led initiative that focuses on bringing awareness of domestic violence that's happening not just within our community, but around the world, and using men's voice to lead the conversation, to uplift people, to re-educate people. We say re-educate because there are a lot of people that were miseducated on what domestic violence is, and also allow people to have these often uncomfortable conversations in regards to manhood, in regards to biases and stereotypes and labeling and the things that we are taught to believe the role of women and men in our society. And then also, most importantly, is to let people know that there are services here that are there to help them if they are in a situation where they don't feel safe. And Vera House is one of those organizations and programs.
So I should say, that Marissa is the vice president of the Vera House board and is the founder and facilitator of Nurturing Individuals' Abilities, NIA Ministries. And Dr. Emad Rahim is an author and a Katook Family Endowed Professor and Chair at Bellevue University, COO at Zenturium, as well as being the White Ribbon co-chair. And my morning workout partner sometimes. Let's just say that too.
Soon, very soon again.
We out here. So with that, and just a little history on the White Ribbon, how it got started, there was a man who shot 14 women at the university in Montreal because he hated feminists and had a list of other women that he planned to kill. And there was a group of men who decided that they were going to take up arms or wear the white ribbon as a symbol of giving up their arms. And that's the brief history of that. So with that, you are the 2021 co-chairs and you're also survivors. So Emad or Marissa and both of you, I'd just like you to share with your audience why it was important for you. I'll go to you, Marissa, first, for you to be the 2021 co-chair, but also to share your very, very powerful story. If you haven't seen the Vera House video, Breakfast for Dinner, the two of them shared their very powerful testimonies.
So for me, it was all about my story, and anything that I do as far as my work is concerned it has to be around my story, because my story is my life's purpose. Mm-hmm. So for me, my story just stems from generational abuse. I lived in it. It was very prevalent on both sides of my family. So it wasn't something that just kind of happened. It's what I lived through. And it morphed itself into my life to where I ended up in a marriage to an abusive man. And actually, when I really started to think about it as I'm doing this campaign, I realized that all of my relationships were abusive, whether they were physical, whether they were mental, emotional, or financial. They were all very abusive. But my marriage was abusive to the point where I lost a child through that abuse. My husband was very charismatic when we were dating, and he switched and flipped as soon as we got married. I ended up not being married with him very long. It lasted just a little over a year because I had to leave within a few months of our marriage. But I had already gotten pregnant. I got pregnant right away. As soon as we got married, I got pregnant. And unbeknownst to myself, I and my husband at the time, we were pregnant with twins, and did not know, and did not find out until after our baby was born, is when we realized that I lost a child, but during one of his tirades, and the tirade became when I left him, and requested for him to leave. He, called and said, I need to come and get my things. And so he had a friend come and bring him, and he told his friend to leave. And he locked myself, and I had a 6-year-old daughter at the time, and I'm pregnant, and he locked us in the house, and he was intent on killing us. His words verbatim were, if I can't have my family, no one will. And he went upstairs and he took my daughter out of her bed, and he came downstairs intent to harm us. And I remember just fighting with everything in me. I took a set of keys that I had, and I just took them and I hit him with everything I had in me, and until I saw blood. And then I was able to lock myself in the bathroom because I was in so much pain from him, from the hits and the banging against the walls. I was yelling. I was opening the windows and yelling out of the window. I was banging on the walls, asking for someone to help me.
Were you in a place like an apartment or something like that?
I was I was living in a townhouse, and so the townhouses were all together.
So people could potentially hear you.
People could hear me, and I had my window. I was able to open my window and scream out the window, and no one came. And I locked myself in the bathroom, and I heard him go somewhere in the house, and I ran out. And that's when I realized that he had broken a key off in the front door, so that I couldn't get out. And I don't know how I managed. I think I knocked him unconscious a little bit, and long enough to where I was able to get the door open. I ran out with my daughter on my hip. We're both in our pajamas. We're barefoot. I'm pregnant, and I'm running door to door, and I'm running down the street, down the area in the complex, just screaming for someone to help me, and no one would help. And I remember I got down to the last apartment, the last building, and I ran down the stairs. And I remember there was a woman that lived there that had spoken to me before, and we'd, been friendly. And I banged on her door, and she saw me, and she saw the blood, and she saw the bruises, and she heard him running after us. And she just pulled us into her apartment, locked the door, and ignored his banging and called the police. And she went to the hospital with me, and she stayed with me through the process of going to a shelter, going back to my apartment, helping me to clean my apartment. And when I decided to leave and actually move back home with my family, she helped me pack everything up. She would watch my daughter for me. She went to doctor's appointments with me, but she stayed with me after it. And it's been 20 years, and I still remember that moment when I went down the stairs and she opened the door. And what that did for me.
Yeah.
And I haven't shared this other part of my story, but 2 years ago, I was sexually assaulted. And I made the choice of not calling the cops. It was it was my fear of how the cops would handle me, how they would handle this man of color, and the shame that went with all of that. And that is how I became a client of Vera House. How I got more deeply involved with Vera House is that when I decided that I would acknowledge that I had been assaulted, Vera House was the first place I went to. And the way that I actually was there doing work because I'd already started doing the anti-racism, anti-oppression work with Vera House as a consultant. And I was there to do that part of the job, and it hit me. And I just remember when it hit me that I was like, wait a minute, I was actually assaulted. And I remember turning to the staff person that I was supposed to be working with, and I just blurted it out in the lobby. And the way Vera House just surrounded me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because I was Marissa, right? Let's be clear about that. It wasn't because I was Marissa. It was because I was someone who come in and had realized and verbalized that I had been hurt, that I had been harmed, that's how they treated me.
And that's so difficult. That piece is so hard for so many people, Marissa. And what I am also struck by is that even though you were harmed, you not trusting the system to take care of you in that moment, deciding that you would put that, and so the trauma of that as well, right?
Yeah.
On top of, right? You know, that and then I don't have support, but I need help, you know, which is for a lot of survivors, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not an unfamiliar territory.
It really, I think that hurt me even more, that I didn't know where else to go.
Mm-hmm.
The thought of, I know that the unjust system is not set up to, one, believe me as a victim,
Mm-hmm.
believe me as a woman of color that sits in a Black body, and also is not set up to deal with emotionally charged situations. So I did think about this person who, although had harmed me, the possibility of either one of us losing our lives stopped me from pursuing legal. Instead, I just chose to heal myself.
Have you received justice for that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I stood up in front of the chief of police, the president of the council, and the mayor and the deputy mayor, and shared this part of the story. And I will honestly say not one of them followed up.
Wow. Well, hopefully they'll hear this today. And
not one of them has followed up. And that, for me, was why I wanted to make sure that I was a part of this campaign, so that I can use my voice.
Yeah, that was confirmation for you, right? Like,
yes,
even in that moment, that's Marissa Saunders sharing her story as a survivor of both domestic and sexual violence. Wow, Marissa, we just appreciate you sharing with us. Dr. Rahim in the house as well. Emad, your story, you have a story as well.
Yeah, my story goes back to early childhood. No, I'm a genocide survivor. So when I say genocide survivor, I mean my father and his entire bloodline was wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Before my daughter was born, I was the last remaining bloodline from my father's side. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Cambodia went through a civil war. It was an intense war that went from a revolution and turned into a genocide.
Sure.
Right. And my family was put into an concentration camp where my father was tortured and eventually executed. My older brother died of starvation and illness in my mother's arms. And millions of people in Cambodia died like that. And we eventually escaped, made our way to a refugee camp in Thailand, where my family once again was being taken advantage of by various groups and various organizations. And then eventually my mother remarried, found a person that she fell in love with in the refugee camp. This person became my stepfather. Our family eventually grew, and we were sponsored to come to America. And I always tell the stories, like the idea is like you come to America and this is obviously this is a great country, but we don't get the full picture of what it looks like when you bring a refugee to America for the first time. And we weren't sent to the suburbs, right? We were not put in a middle-class family. They placed us off in the most roughest and harsh environments. And they put my family in Brooklyn, New York in the 80s, during the height of the crack epidemic, right? This is when the Bronx was being burnt down. This is when there were race riots in Brooklyn between the Jewish community, the Black communities, the Puerto Rican communities, the Korean communities. Like, everyone was in influx and fighting, and there was gang warfare all over the place. So we were caught in the middle of all that. As a little kid, I was at a block party at the wrong place at the wrong time and ended up getting shot in the leg, right? So to survive a war, to come to this country and get caught in a different type of war zone and get shot in the leg as a little kid.
Right.
And as I grew up, my stepfather became more and more abusive, right? Physical abuse, mental abuse, everything you can think of. He was extremely abusive, not just towards me, but towards my mother, towards my siblings. But I want to say, from what I remember, is probably me the most, because I wasn't his biological son.
Right. And you didn't know that all, right, growing up, right? You didn't really.
No, I did not know that. I was too young.
Right.
I did not know the story of my biological father and the concentration camp until I was about 14 years old. Right. So I thought this man that was beating me, that was taking advantage of me, that was threatening me all this time was my biological father. It wasn't until I was 12 years old. He had lost his job. He came home early. He went into my room, took my clothes, took my bed sheets, brought them to the backyard and set them on fire, right? Just set them on fire in the backyard right in front of me. And he told me that the reason why he was doing that is because he lost his job, and he lost his job because I was bad luck. That he lost his job, like pretty much everything that went wrong in his life was somehow related to me living in this household. And then he told me that he was going to kill me that night, and I believed him. Right. So at 12 years old, I packed up my clothes, put them in a duffel bag. Right. I had probably like $20 or $40 that I had saved up, put that in my pocket, and I ran away. So for the next 2 weeks in Syracuse, New York, I was 12 years old and homeless, right? Wandering the streets of Syracuse, and downtown looked nothing like.
Where'd you sleep?
So in Syracuse, New York, on Fayette. So Fayette and South Salina, where the bus station used to be. Remember, they used to have that bus station booth, and they had the little awning that was over it. I would sit there, catch a bus until the bus stopped running and brought me back to downtown. And then I would sit underneath that awning and talk to the central person until they left. And then I would sleep underneath that awning. I would wander the streets. It was scary as heck, scared to death. Downtown was a very scary place back then, even more so. And then I would wake up and I would walk to Grant Middle School, to Frazier. I think it was Frazier at the time still. And I would just, try to find a place to sleep, try to find a place to hide. I would stay in the bathrooms. I would try to find try to get basically meals, eat breakfast, eat lunch, stay after school programs. So basically just trying to occupy my time and hopefully hopefully no one found out that I was a runaway.
Did you call your mother at all?
No, I mean, this is before cell phones, right? This is
right. You had to, right.
This is before even beepers.
Right.
Right. So it was like either you call someone using a booth, a phone booth, right? But basically after 2 weeks of this, I got really tired. I was exhausted. I was afraid, and I ended up going to my sister's house. I have an older sister that we adopted in the refugee camp, and went to her. And she told me that they were looking for me, that everyone was looking for me, that they were afraid and they were worried about me. And she told me that I could stay with her. So for a good almost 2 years, I ended up staying with her until I got into a fight with my uncle. And it's not, and I would say not a physical fight. It was a verbal fight. I was being a juvenile delinquent. I was 14 at the time. causing mayhem. And I was living under another person's household, not respecting their house. And in that fight, he called me a bastard. And, I knew exactly what a bastard meant. So I didn't understand why he was calling me a bastard. And he basically said, listen, I expected you to be this way because you don't have a father. And then that's when I found out that the person that was abusing me and my siblings was not my father. And after that fight, I went back home. I thought that I could make the situation better. I thought I could help persuade my mom and my siblings to leave this household, right? So I went back, and the same night I went back, another fight happened between him and my mother. Much of it was because I was moving back in. And, they an arguing, match started happening, lots of threats happening. And then I basically told him that he's not my father, and he has no power over me. And I told my mother, we need to leave, right? That we don't need him. We don't need to be here. We should take what we have and leave. He attacked me. And when he went to attack me, my mother jumped in front of me and he ended up knocking her out cold, right? So he actually threw a fist, he threw a punch, and ended up missing me, hitting my mother. She was knocked out cold. And at 14, I don't remember much. I just blacked out and I was on top of him. Like, I don't remember how it happened. I just remember being on top of him. I was punching, I was screaming. There was blood everywhere. And I don't know how long it was happening, but everything started slowing down. It felt like there was, all of a sudden, things became silent. And I looked over my shoulder, and my younger brother and sisters were peeking out of their bedroom door crying. And what they saw was their brother on top of their father, their biological father, punching him and hitting him and things like that. So it stopped me. My mother got up, pulled me off of him. He got up, went to the kitchen, grabbed 2 large butcher knives, right? And came back to the living room, and it looked like he was going to kill us. So right then and there, I thought, like, this is the end of our story. And I remember pushing my mother behind me and pushing my siblings back in the room and just trying to figure out how
you gonna get out of this?
Yeah, how to protect everybody. And he just took a step back. He put the knives on top of the coffee table, sat on the couch, and just starts laughing. Like very sinister, scary laugh, blood all over his face, all of his clothes. He just starts laughing. And just like Marissa, we ran out of the house, went to a neighbor's house. And this is like in the middle of the night. It's like maybe 2 a.m. We're banging on the door. The neighbor opened the door. And I remember it was Miss LaVale. I remember Miss LaVale very clear. She didn't ask. She knew, right? She didn't ask. She opened the door. She pulled my mom and me in. She grabbed the phone. We called 911, and she stayed with us. And there was a caseworker from the refugee center by the name of Bob. He actually came to the scene to communicate, to advocate on our behalf. So there's a lot of people at play that helped with this process, right? And we haven't seen him since. He passed away actually last year. He might have passed away due to COVID. He lived in California, but we haven't seen him over 30 years. And so very similar to Marissa's story is that we're both here because someone helped us, right? Someone put themselves on the line, opened the doors, let us in, and helped us.
Amen.
So we both believe that it's our responsibility to use our voice, to use our stories, to do the same thing for others.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes or so left. What has this partnership, you being the honorary co-chairs, what has this experience done for you? How has it impacted you? I know that you both did the 12-man model, or Emad and Marissa. We've so Vera House asked the co-chairs to actually go through our 12-man model, which is came out of the White Women Campaign about 10 years ago with our 12-man model, which is men engaged in conversation and rethinking masculinity and manhood. And Marissa, you came to one of the sessions. Emad, you've been in a couple of them. So not only as the 12 men, but also as co-chairs, what has this experience been for you? Marissa, I'll go to you first.
So for me, I think there's a couple of things. One, it's Women's History Month. So it afforded me an opportunity to lift up the voice and voices of women. But more importantly, lifting up the voices of women and allowing space to be heard, to be listened to. I think what was so powerful for me attending the 12 Men model was that I was able to share my story with men who were engaging in these conversations. And what I've noticed and what I've seen is that a victim's voice, a woman's voice, is usually missing out of those conversations. And so it became powerful because what happened after was that there was an apology. And for me, that was freeing. There was deliverance in that. I didn't realize that if I had just gotten an apology, so many times, so often, those apologies aren't necessarily offered in that context. Of course, they're offered as the offender offers the apology to try to make things right so that you come back. I've heard those apologies, but to hear the apology in a different way meant everything for me. And the last piece of why it's been so important for me and what it's done for me is that it's created this dialogue. And because I've been privileged to be in this position, it's allowed for me to partner with someone where I then feel supported by men. And no matter what, for me personally, as a victim, as a female, it meant and means the world to me. To be listened to be heard by men, and to be believed. To be believed. That's powerful for me personally. I can only speak for myself, but that's a piece of what I'm hoping I've been able to give, possibly with someone else, with another man and another female, that they can then come together and have these powerful conversations together.
Emad, what's it meant for you?
Yeah, I can attest with what Marissa said, and I believe having the dynamic between me and her really changed the game.
Word.
Right? Yeah. And I was there when Marissa shared her story, and men in that room apologized, right? And many of them said that they wish they had this conversation long ago.
Sure.
Right. So this type of experience is very transformational to a person like me, and has humbled me in so many ways, right? Because in many of those spaces, especially the work that I do as an educator, as a public speaker, I'm the person that's always talking and have the mic in front of me, right? So what we're trying to do is pass that mic and allow and help amplify other people's voices, other people's lived experiences, and other people's concerns, but kind of using our story in the beginning to show some vulnerability and some empathy to move along this process. And I think having Marissa in the room allowed people to be a little, to understand empathy in a different way.
Well, let me just do a couple of things. Number one, the Vera House is at verahouse.org. If you right now, having heard the stories of our survivors, are in need of support right now, there's a 24-hour hotline, 315-468-3260, or verahouse.org. Somebody's there right now to chat it up with you if you need to do that. Those calls, those chats are confidential, and we will get you on the journey of support that you need. Whether you're ready to leave, whether you just want to talk about it, 315-468-3260. There also are activities. This is the White Women Campaign. We have a Next Man Up campaign. So we're asking men on social media to say why they believe in this work and the support of Vera House and what we're trying to do, and ask them to tag their boy or somebody that they know so that they can be the next man up. And that's a sports metaphor. Like, who's the next man up? Somebody goes down, who's the next man up, right? And so who's the next man up going to be? And let me just say to both Marissa and Emad, on behalf of our community, but also on behalf of Vera House, thank you for stepping out and stepping forward and sharing your truth with us as community, because somebody has been healed today, right? Somebody has been released from whatever it is that they've been experiencing, that they feel empowered now that they can take a step and that they can have a life. Doesn't mean that you don't have trauma as a result. Doesn't mean that there's some consequences to the experiences, but at the same time, you're showing us that there is hope, that there is hope, that there is hope. So verahouse.org, our 2021 White Ribbon Campaign co-chairs, go to verahouse.org, do a campaign. It is also a way that Vera House raises unrestricted monies in support of activities and helping people like Marissa when she came to if she would have come and need sheltering and we need to get her clothing and shelter and all these things, that's what that kind of money is for. So it's time for us as men, Emad, to step up, use our power, use our voices, use our influence where we can make a difference. Emad, Rahim, Marissa, Saunders, we thank you so much.